She never saw it coming. It had been the kind of relationship people dreamed about, the kind they would tell their friends about with a sense of pride. They met at a mutual friend's party, both a little shy at first, but their connection was undeniable. From the moment they exchanged their first conversation, it felt like their worlds had collided in the best way possible. Everything seemed easy with him. He made her laugh in ways no one else could, and for the first time in years, she felt truly seen. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and soon, they found themselves inseparable. They spent the next few months wrapped up in each other's company, their love blooming like an intricate, well-tended garden. Long walks in the park turned into late-night talks about everything from their childhood memories to their hopes and dreams for the future. Everything felt perfect. They shared a life full of comfort and ease, always supportive, always there for one another. He had become her best friend, confidant, and partner. She trusted him with everything she had, with everything she was. Even their fights were rare, and when they happened, they didn't feel like battles, but mere misunderstandings that were easily resolved. Their arguments were more about small things, like who would take out the trash or who forgot to reply to a text. Yet, with each passing day, she couldn't help but feel that her life had finally found its rhythm, like they were a perfect match in every way. He was the calm to her storm, and she was the fire to his ice. Together, they balanced each other out. They both wanted the same things: marriage, children, a house full of laughter. The future was a picture they had painted together, each brushstroke carefully added. They would talk about where they would vacation next or which city they'd like to settle down in. Every conversation about the future felt so real, so tangible. Their connection seemed to be written in the stars, and for a while, she believed that. But even in the most seemingly perfect relationships, cracks can start to form, though they may be so subtle that one doesn't notice them immediately. At first, it was small. He would stay late at work more often, and his phone would buzz constantly, but he was always so quick to reassure her. "It's just work stuff," he'd say, offering a smile that melted her doubts. But those late nights were becoming more frequent, and she couldn't help but notice the change in him. It wasn't that he was distant, but there was something in his eyes, a subtle shift, a faint hesitation whenever she asked about his day. He had always been the type to share everything with her, every little detail of his life, no matter how insignificant. But now, he seemed to retreat when she asked simple questions, as if some of the answers were too complicated to explain. The more she pressed, the more elusive he became. His work schedule, once a reliable source of pride for him, now seemed like an excuse. She noticed the way his phone screen lit up when a text message came in and how he would quickly glance at it, then lock the screen, as if it was too much to let her see. The first time she felt a wave of unease was when they were out at dinner and he excused himself to take a phone call. She didn't think much of it at first, but as time passed, she realized he was spending longer periods talking, and when he returned, he would act as if nothing was wrong. Something didn't sit right with her. She tried to shake the thought out of her mind. After all, they were happy, weren't they? There was no reason for her to doubt him. But then came the strange, small things. The way he would be on his phone late at night while lying next to her, his fingers typing with an intensity she'd never seen before. She never asked about it directly, though. She didn't want to seem like the jealous type. Yet every time she tried to get closer, his smiles seemed a little less genuine, his responses a little more curt. It wasn't just the physical distance, it was emotional, too. He seemed distracted, lost in his own world, and she couldn't help but feel like she was no longer a part of it. But still, she didn't want to believe that anything was wrong. Maybe it was just a rough patch. Maybe it was just the stress of work or life in general. She clung to the idea that everything would return to normal. They'd had their ups and downs before, and they always came out stronger. Perhaps this was just another bump in the road. She kept telling herself that, day after day, hoping that everything would fall back into place. But a sinking feeling settled deep within her, one she couldn't shake. The more she thought about it, the more her mind wandered. Was it possible that the cracks she had ignored were bigger than she realized? Maybe she had been so caught up in the picture of their perfect life that she failed to see the small signs of trouble. Deep down, she knew something had changed. But what? What had happened to the man she fell in love with? The man who couldn't wait to share every moment with her. Despite her growing suspicions, she tried to hold on to hope. She reminded herself that relationships weren't perfect, that every couple went through phases. She wanted to believe that this was just a phase too. After all, they had been through so much together. Why would this time be any different? But as the days went on, it became harder to ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. She couldn't shake the sense that there was something he wasn't telling her, some secret he was keeping. It wasn't until the small, subtle changes in his behavior became more pronounced that she began to fear the worst. The man she loved, the man she had trusted with her heart, was slipping away from her, and she didn't know why or how to stop it. The signs were hard to ignore now. She had tried to brush them off at first, convinced that it was all in her head, but things were changing in ways that couldn't be denied. She had always prided herself on being intuitive, on knowing when something felt off, but this was different. The moments of doubt had grown into something more palpable, more real. It started with the texts. At first, it wasn't anything overtly suspicious. He would check his phone, type a quick response, then slip it back into his pocket. But after a while, those quick responses became more frequent. He would retreat to another room during dinner or stay in bed late at night, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone screen. She tried to pass it off as nothing more than him catching up on work emails or scrolling through social media. But one evening, the phone buzzed, and for the briefest of moments, she caught a glimpse of the name on the screen. It was someone she didn't recognize, a name that didn't sound familiar, but it was the way he quickly swiped the screen away that made her stomach churn. She asked him about it the next day, trying to keep her tone casual, not wanting to seem accusatory. He brushed it off, of course. "Just a work thing," he said, flashing that reassuring smile. But the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. It was there like a mask, but it felt like he was hiding something. The conversation ended there, but her mind kept returning to that moment, replaying it over and over. Why had he reacted that way? What was he trying to hide? The distance between them grew, not just physically, but emotionally. He became less interested in her day, less engaged in their conversations. His mind seemed elsewhere, his responses curt, often distracted. She couldn't breathe. Her chest felt tight as she stared at the phone in her hands, the evidence of his betrayal still vivid in her mind. The messages, the lies, the hidden affection. Everything was laid out so clearly, so undeniably. The trust she had so freely given him now felt like a cruel joke. She had always prided herself on her intuition, and now it was as though her worst fear had been realized. The truth stared back at her, cold and indifferent. She had been blind, but no longer. She didn't know how long she sat there, frozen, the weight of the betrayal settling deep within her. The man she loved, the man who had been her best friend, her confidant. He wasn't who she thought he was. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Everything they had shared, every intimate moment, every plan for the future, had been a lie. How could she have been so naive? She had given him her heart, and he had given her nothing but deceit. Her thoughts were a blur of anger, confusion, and pain. She had trusted him. She had believed in the promises they made, in the future they were building together. And now, it was all a shattered dream. She knew she couldn't let it slide, couldn't just pretend like nothing had changed. She had to confront him. She had to know why. The moment he walked through the door, she didn't waste a second. "Who is she?" Her voice was cold, steely, barely controlled. She couldn't even look at him, not yet. All she could feel was the storm brewing inside of her. He froze, his face losing its color as the realization dawned on him. He had been caught. For a moment, there was only silence between them, the kind of silence that spoke volumes. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words didn't come. His eyes flickered to the phone in her hands, and she knew he knew. He knew she knew. "Don't even try to lie to me," she spat, her voice shaking with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "I saw the messages. I know everything. What the hell, Mark? How long has this been going on?" Her hands were trembling, but it wasn't just from the anger, it was from the hurt. The crushing realization that the man she had trusted with her heart had so easily thrown it away. He took a step toward her, his expression a mixture of guilt and something else she couldn't quite place. He started, his voice shaky, but she wasn't interested in hearing his excuses. How long, she repeated, cutting him off. How long have you been seeing her? Was it just a fling? Or was this something you planned? The questions poured out of her like a dam breaking. Each one stung more than the last, tearing into the already fractured pieces of her heart. She could see it in his eyes now, the guilt, the shame. But it wasn't enough. His regret wasn't enough to erase the hurt he had caused. I'm sorry, he finally said, but the words felt hollow, meaningless. How could he be sorry? Sorry for getting caught? Sorry for betraying her? It wasn't the apology she needed. It wasn't even close. Sorry, she scoffed, shaking her head. Sorry doesn't fix this, Mark. Sorry doesn't bring back the trust you shattered. Sorry doesn't undo the lies. Her voice was rising now, the hurt spilling out in waves. She had spent so much time denying the truth, convincing herself that everything would be okay, but now, there was no denying it. He had betrayed her, and nothing could change that. I never wanted to hurt you, he said, his voice low, his hands nervously rubbing his face. It just happened. The excuse was weak, pathetic. It didn't even make sense. She had given him everything, her love, her trust, her future. And he had thrown it all away because something just happened? How long? She asked again, her eyes narrowing as she stared at him. He hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. She felt the frustration building within her. How long, Mark? She demanded, her voice now a harsh whisper. Months, he admitted, his voice barely audible. The word hit her like a slap in the face. Months. For months, he had been seeing someone else, lying to her, hiding this from her. All the while, she had been sitting there, thinking everything was fine. The silence that followed was deafening. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to react. The man she had loved, the man who had made her feel safe, was now a stranger. All the memories they had built together, the trips, the quiet nights, the dreams, felt like nothing but a cruel lie. It was hard to breathe. It was hard to think. You've ruined everything, she whispered, her voice cracking. Everything. And for what? For someone who doesn't even matter. Her mind was spinning, her heart a tangled mess of emotions. He was standing in front of her, looking as broken as she felt, but she couldn't bring herself to care. Not anymore. I never meant for this to happen, he said, but the words were empty, meaningless. His regret wasn't enough. His guilt wasn't enough. Yeah, well, you did it anyway, she shot back, her voice sharp with bitterness. You chose her over me. You chose lies over honesty. You chose betrayal. Her words hung in the air between them, the weight of them heavy and unyielding. He opened his mouth to speak again, but she didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to hear anything he had to say. There was no excuse, no reason that could make this okay. Without another word, she turned and walked away. It was over. The trust was gone. The love was gone. And there was no going back. She didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal or the fact that she had let it happen. The days that followed were a blur. She had gone through the motions, eating, sleeping, and working, but nothing felt real anymore. The future she had imagined was gone, and in its place was a deep, hollow ache that she couldn't shake. The worst part was that she didn't even know how to start putting the pieces of herself back together. Everything felt tainted, broken beyond repair. The conversations with him had stopped. The apologies that once felt genuine now felt like empty words. They were pointless. He had confessed, but what was there left to say? Every time she saw him, she was reminded of the lies, the deceit, and the love that had been shattered. It wasn't even the idea of him being with someone else that bothered her the most. It was the fact that he had been so willing to betray her, to disregard everything they had built together for the sake of a fleeting connection. She could still remember the way he looked when he confessed, the shame in his eyes, but it didn't matter anymore. She didn't need his remorse. It didn't change anything. She spent the first few days trying to figure out what to do. She thought about leaving, about